Okay, so I'm going to talk for a little bit about the Earth changes, and I've been trying to help us all understand that Mars doesn't have any insight. That's its big bugaboo. It doesn't have any insight, it doesn't have any intersubjectivity, and it doesn't have any integration. And that's what makes it a culture of domination. So, for example, in Mars culture, Mars can see what's going to happen in the future, just like the light can. So Mars is darkness because it has no insight, right? If there's no insight, that's being not having any lights on. You can't see anything. And so it tries to plan things without any insight. So Mars could see that the planet was going to do a great deal of movement and change. And instead of just allowing the Earth to do her process and humanity to go through its changes, it tried to see what it needed to do to be in charge of it. Well, a recent example is that loss I had with the baby. So Mars saw that I was supposed to have a child and it wanted to do it its way. So it artificially inseminated me to do it its way. It always can see what's going to happen, and it wants to control how to do that in a loveless state, in a state of control. So it could see the Earth was going to do that, and it's planned to use all of us in our dissociation to have a lot of riots and bombing and air raids and Holocaust camps and germ warfare and nuclear activity. And it's doing that because it has to do what it sees it's supposed to do, which is have the Earth be heavily cleansed and go through a lot of booms. Well, if Mars can be put under control by those of us who are really following my teachings, we save the Earth. Because the real New Jerusalem, the real new heaven and new earth, yes, there is an organic process where the volcanoes do empty the molten core of the earth with lava and lava flow because it needs to be lightened. And there's loss of life as part of the earthquakes and all the rest. And God knows who to spare and who to resurrect and who to have survive if we just leave it alone and allow God to be God. So Mars sees all the outcome and tries to do it all in a dissociated state, devoid of insight, devoid of integration, and devoid of intersubjectivity. And that's the big difference between the beautiful booms like you describe feeling the good love from. So we have beautiful booms or we have blow-ups and bam-bams. And I want to help us. I want to do everything I can to serve humanity with the treatment manuals and all the rest so that it's the beautiful booms and not the blow-ups and bam-bams. And part of why I was born in America is because they've been following me in a way that's empowering us with the United Nations, with the World Garden, with the World Teacher who can be born in the World Garden to serve the world, just as I'm here to serve all of humanity from a place of insight. So if you think about what's been going on with me, it's been control just to control. If we have insight, we can look and see every day she's making these teachings. We're only giving her a small pittance of disability. For over a decade, the one who's come to help us and work with world peace has somehow survived on less than $12,000 a year. She's traveled the world and all the rest. The only financial contribution I ever received was from my dear friend Margaret, and because it was done in a begrudging way, my Heavenly Father took it into the ocean so that the gift for me to get by didn't work. So another example of how this works as far as when the Mother of Mercy admits you in, it's because I have insight about what is just and what is true, because Mother and Father together are working to provide that. And Mother and Father do that through the true twins that are our way forward for humanity. It just so happens that Isu was given the authority of the Father. And as the twin, I've been on a journey for my consciousness who had that capacity as the twin to be able to provide that with also the vibration of the Mother, so that we have the 3 in 1, the Holy Spirit vibration. So if we understand that the way that we've treated me is only about control, and that we don't need to do that anymore, we can make new choices. 2 requests I have would be that I be compensated by the United Nations with a salary for my daily teachings and for the counseling. That feels like a really fair request. And the other is I have a great need to receive the Eucharist every day. I'm a Catholic. That's my faith. I'm not trying to impose it on the world in the way that I come from. But if I could have a priest whose vibration I know is working with transubstantiation well, that would be appropriate if we're practicing not in the Mars way, to provide me a priest I know who does good transubstantiation, because I feel vibration. Father Chris, Father Cliff, and Father Peter are 3 priests who are all working with the good vibration for transubstantiation. I also have a lot of respect and care for Father Terry. I'd like to see him here. So that's a basic request that is reasonable if we're meeting me from a place of insight. Now let's talk about what's going on with you with this lack of integration this morning. Can you tell me what you're getting in touch with as we sit with this, Andrew?
Yeah, there's fear, and there's I'm noticing the dissociation, and that I feel spaced out.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like it has to do with, we talked about my friend earlier in the conversation, coming up around that.
I know what it's about, but I never know how to help you folks, because I'd like it to be your own insight.
Mm-hmm.
But you haven't gotten there yet, so I'm going to coach you or guide you a little. What did you notice you felt in your body when I came to the door last night to get the media files?
I was afraid, and I felt like I needed to turn away from you.
So you noticed then, right? So that if you're paying attention to somatic cues, there's probably some information for you in that experience that is connected to what's happening to you this morning. So, we've had a pattern we are breaking when it comes to you having received that absolute exoneration for reptilian interacting that we've had no integration around, right? And so that would have been, would you agree that probably would have been a window for there to have been a reptilian exchange?
Yeah, when you came to the door, it was evening. It felt like that sort of time.
Okay, so you're safe on the grounds, and I've talked a lot about how we've been made, all of us, this is about all of us, have been made into moles without knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that the reason we're bathed in bananas and given experiences of terror is to keep us available to the ultraviolet frequency, where we can time travel faster than the speed of light +1, because that's what Mars does. It does its own rip-off that's in a fear-based vibration of what we can do in the infrared. So, part of what's going to happen with my being here to serve everybody is that I'll work with the word, I'll work with sonic vibration in the most tender way to open up the dimensions that guide us into the new heaven and the new earth as one unified field. And that is the holy way. This trauma way, what's going on? You're getting more frightened and guinea piggish.
I'm just trying to listen and track myself at the same time, and it's not doing a great job.
Okay, so what happens then is that you've stopped having any active trauma like the fugues or anything like that. You're safe on the grounds, but the deep conditioning has been to use that other frequency to continue with your responsibilities as a mole, or this is an accusation, but as reporting in the other frequency to your authorities. And I don't know how to help everybody get in touch with this, because it's really outside of the parameters of what we know. But I'd really like to encourage you to, because the dissociation can never really cease if you keep doing what you're doing, which is no shame on you, but you're still going back to your authorities in the other frequency. We've talked about some of the ways you've caught jumping time, bouncing time. So that still hasn't stopped for you. And if you were to have it stop, I think you're really frightened, because you have a job, you have a responsibility. You're monitoring the one, you're building trust, you're doing negotiations. There's nothing bad you're doing, because what you're doing is you're speaking to your supervisors in a way that's trying to build trust and establish that you really know that, this is an okay way to go. So there's nothing malevolent. It's just that outside of your awareness, without your knowing how exactly, you're still, even on the grounds, jumping, time jumping, frequency jumping. How can I help you, or how can you and Shara-Ann help you to catch that and become co-conscious and shut that frequency down for your welfare?
I think I thought for a second about having for a while I've wanted the little camera to track myself, but I don't know if it's something that we'd see on camera.
I don't know. I know we all know that public bathrooms are places we jump. So don't use a public bathroom, for example. Paying attention to the impulses. What are some other ideas you have about how to catch that?
To notice, I guess, when I start to feel like I'm really revved up, I think that's sort of when it happens.
Yeah. When have you noticed that lately?
Well, I think I started to notice it yesterday, that we were talking about the door, that experience there a little bit.
Now, see, since I brought this up, now I feel you calm down. I felt like I was going to be like have a car drive over me with terror. And all of a sudden I started talking about this and it went down. Are you able to track any shifts internally as I feel that?
Yeah, I feel my heart feels less like it's expanding in an uncomfortable way.
So this is again how you become safe, because you want to be able to know what's going on inside you and not have me tell you. One of the gifts for you and for a lot of men who are doing this journey with me, who connect with their divine twin, is that the divine feminine has the intuition to help you. That would be another eye. I don't know how many eyes we're going to have by the time we're done. Intuition, interconnectedness, interbeing, insight, integration. So, your integration with Shara-Ann can help you. And the other thing I want to teach on is a tool for states of being, for referencing how integrated am I in my day-to-day life. So when we don't have healthy integration, who I am in one time space, I can't access with volition in another. Like the other day when we were shooting, remember? Can you describe that experience?
Yeah, I went into an experience of feeling helpless, like I couldn't do the simple action of that we need to do for the production without, like I needed you to do it for me, kind of like a child.
Like a child, right? So you were in a child state and you couldn't access the adult skill set with volition. And that's normal through the integration process. Because there was a time you wouldn't even known that was in you. So, right, you're on a trajectory of healing. So then you want to be able to have ways that that child state is within volition, so it might need to exist, but not take over in the workplace, you know. So when the dissociation was really bad, it never took over in the workplace because it was so completely cut off.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a management piece, self-management. And Dan Siegel's 8 states of identity across time and space. I'll find that for us for the manual at some point. Okay, so here's the thing is that, Andrew, you have a wonderful supervisor. I know who he is. I'm not going to announce it on the air because I respect his privacy, but he really wants to heal. And the best way he can heal isn't for you to jump frequencies. So part of what's happened is that you have a great loyalty to him. He's a really good man, really good leader. And if I can help the parts of you that don't know that, you may not know you're doing this, but I'm going to talk to the parts that do, or that aspect of your super conscious that does. I want that communication to be that you can be a better friend to your supervisor by not needing to jump anymore. Because what he needs and longs for, I hear telepathically from his soul, is time in the garden. And his soul, I've told again and again, there's no shame, there's absolute mercy, just as there is for all of us who are called to really proceed. And so, I think part of the terror is that if you, quote, lose control over me, you can't jump and you can't be loyal to your supervisor. Because we've all been taught we've got to control me to a certain degree. Now, as trust is being built, good things are happening. We're starting to see that Mom's vision is good, right? We've got a United Nations approach. The World Garden for the World Teacher to be born. We all know that it could never be a secret that I'm here with all the satellites in different countries. So the right way to proceed is that we have the garden be known as the Garden for Healing from Trauma and Dissociation that is global for our leaders to serve their people, their countries. Are you getting in touch with anything as I'm trying to help you understand that you're time jumping with a really powerful boss or supervisor, and that isn't something that helps him anymore?
As you were trying to talk to the me that does that, there was just fear there. And sort of just a vague sense of doing that.
Why would you be afraid, I wonder? Now, see, did you catch what you did just now, my son?
I did something with my face.
No, what you're doing is you're trying to get me to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of what I'm trying to break as far as the being the yes man versus your I am presence. You're looking to me to give you a hint. Why would you have felt terror? As I was explaining, you don't have to do that anymore.
Because I guess I don't know how to not.
No, it's because there's a certain amount of trauma and abuse happening in that relationship, and you'll get in trouble if you don't jump. Now that person is just like you. We've worked with some really heinous memories that aren't you at all. So this person wouldn't really want to do that. I'm not worried. But part of what keeps you jumping is the punitive element, pretty seriously punitive. You've been made responsible for the one, according to the secret one world government we didn't know we were all part of, jumping time without knowing or doing it. then what do you get in touch with as you try and be with this?
Pressure. There's a lot of pressure to have that role.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of pressure, kiddo. A lot of pressure.
It's almost like being like squeezed in a vice.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of, there's just a lot of people that are needing me to, like, keep up. And like I don't really want to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's part of the carpet being pulled out from under your feet, is those who have been putting the pressure on you. I think we all know now that it's time to shift, right? That it's time to shift from trying to get answers and find out if I'm going to expose or shame anybody. I think I've made it pretty clear at this point that that's not going on with me. And that actually I wouldn't be making these YouTubes every day if I had a private way to teach my leaders, my beautiful leaders, my traumatized leaders. And that I don't want you to be under this pressure anymore. It's actually very hard on your body to have to go back and forth all the time. Everybody's body. But it's been pretty bad the past couple of days because you're not being dissociated in a outside, like in the 3D way, like you were with all the fugues. But how are you ever really going to reconfigure? I'm talking about molecularly, if you're going faster than the speed of light +1. What I started to notice yesterday when I tried to help you with the masculine embodiment was that instead of it being integration, it became a switch. And it became a switch into the masculine military altar. So there's no integration for any of us if we're still under the obligation of our false authority, right? It isn't God's love or trust in God. It's that we all have to jump back and forth to get information and answers secretly instead of being in a healthy interpersonal, confidential, and compassionate relationship with me one-on-one. So what are you tracking now?
Trying not to like get lost in fear, but it's just like the pressure went down a little bit when I talked about it, but then it's like builds again.
Mm-hmm. So how can you learn what this is all trying to tell you about what's really going on for you?
And it's like the pressure is just squeezing.
Mm-hmm. See, this is where there can never be an I am. I'm so sorry. It's why for a long time I need you training in the new earth, because you don't know. There's no shame in that, but you see that there's no insight if I don't tell you. You need to be able to know who you are and how to be attuned, or you're going to keep jumping and nobody's going to heal. It's all ultraviolet secrecy, and that means that you're always more or less a front. Now, do I know that you're a front who wants to heal? Yes. That's why hours and hours and hours have been given you, with more love every day. Every day there's a great deal of love. So I'm not trying to punish you, but I'm trying to help you understand that the way it works with mercy, right, the new heaven and the new earth, is that Mother Father understands what a soul is ready for. We are able to track where they are in their enlightenment, which is integration and insight and intersubjectivity. And that I've been aware for a long time that it's like there isn't quite the inner life that there can be for you to be safe with yourself in an abiding I am. Now, that's normal when the trauma's been as bad as it is. but it's very perilous to try to proceed with any kind of deeper journeying or growth if really there's still a front and underneath it there's vast terror for who you're really serving, which is the authority who's frightening. He's a good man, but he's been terrorized and he's been taught to be your authority with a certain element of terror. You see? What's going on for you?
And just, it's like a dawning of more realization of that's true. And that my inner life isn't what I feel like I know it should be. It's just that there's the fear, because there's fear. Even if I'm trying to like choose love all the time, it's just they're still there.
Right. So I really want to ask you to take the next couple of days to be with that fear. It's terror, and that terror is necessary for you to jump. You can't jump in the ultraviolet frequency without a high level of terror or rage as your generating catalyst. And that terror will go away if you know what's really going on for you. And of course you know that you're not in trouble with me. That what I'm telling you is that at this point, because of the loyalty to the ultraviolet authority, you can't have the insight to grow your I am that I am as a whole being. So I'm trying to help you to know how to stop that cycle so that you can and really proceed. And that once you know how to stop it, everything can be reevaluated about where in the new heaven and the new earth you're really called to be. But until you, one, think about what's appropriate as far as how much I can help you as the counselor. This is stuff that a counselor could help with, right? Just figuring out how to have insight into what's going on. Or are you at a place where you can really know how to find out how you're jumping, why you're jumping, when you're jumping, how to stay whole molecularly. So the floaty bunny is staying in idle so that you can jump as needed to serve the other authority that isn't the I am that I am, the great heart. It's the great fear that is the heart of the one world order that's domination based. You never asked to be an agent. I never asked to be an agent. None of us did. None of us even maybe know. When I went through all that scare with the pregnancy 2 months ago, I was taken into the false white brotherhood countless times. There was one point where I used a public restroom at a bus stop in the middle of the city, and I was in the stall, and they used that to double check that I was a certain blood type that would match blood from what they had tissue or blood from my brother, to figure out if I'm really the twin. So these things are extremely esoteric, and the false white brotherhood is a real bugaboo for all of us to be safe, because it's functioning at the 8th dimension, and it's what happened with the false white brotherhood is that everybody's being a brother and nobody's serving God. They forgot that the idea of the real brotherhood is what the new heaven's supposed to be, which is being in humility and trust to the great heart. And everybody started being a good brother to everybody, and I got kicked out because last year somebody came into where I was working as a psychic and a reader, and I didn't say hello to a brother because he's in the brotherhood, and that's a rule book, right? The rule book says you say hello. Well, I didn't say hello because he's a candidate to be a son of God, and he's really off the mark right now in countless ways when it comes to treating me with domination. So it was really healthy that I didn't say hello, because he came in a very mafia way. So what happened with the Brotherhood is it became basically a one world mafia. And that's one thing that's hard enough for all of us. But you have a one world mafia that is got a dissociative time jumping element, and it's harmful. How you want to integrate with all your heart, soul, and being. I don't doubt that for a minute. I don't not genuinely care for your welfare as a son of God. I genuinely want to see you proceeding in every way possible.
I know that. I think before I would have been like afraid that I was in trouble because you're saying this to me, and I don't feel that way. I feel a certain amount of grief that this is still there. It's like, because every single time this happens, every time I think it's that I've gotten past it, and there it still is.
But you're not in any ritual abuse. You're not in a military thing like happened, or being drugged, or right. You're not hurting me in a reptilian state. You caught that moment. I'm sorry for the grief. I just want to review that this isn't all or nothing, Andrew. This isn't that you aren't making great progress in really beautiful and authentic ways. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're getting to the hardest one for any of us to catch. Myself too, right? I mean, I was in a bathroom, that was 2 months ago. So there's all kinds of ways we're all still vulnerable with this curse of blood and the way that it's opened up these frequencies that all I'm having this dialogue with you for and with others for is to express my care and concern, to reassure everybody I do know what's going on, and that I want to help us shut it down in a way that doesn't involve incarceration, punishment, exposure, shame. So come back to the grief and talk with me.
I just want to have that insight, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that what you're saying is true. I know that I need to know without asking you to tell me. And so I think that I've known that, and especially since Cheyenne been here, there's been a certain amount of like, I felt like I wanted like more, like I was like, now I'm gonna know, now I can know, and that hasn't happened in that way, where I can, know that I'm jumping frequencies and when and why and how. So it feels a little bit, on the one hand, I know that all things are possible with God. On the other hand, it feels like helpless, like I can't. So,
Well, let's come back to inner subjectivity, okay? So one of the things that's so important is that you can't stop this by yourself, because it's a two-way thing. Just like you co-create and I co-create how others, the whole world sees me through how you perceive, therefore you are. So knowing who your supervisor is, I would ask that he help Andrew not have to do this anymore, right? So that's one thing, is for your supervisor to understand that this isn't healthy and it's even not acceptable anymore. So you have to stop having that prompt from the intersubjective relationship. How does that feel to hear?
Emotional, but good, like some of the pressure kind of went away.
Mm-hmm. What is that? It's like there's more knowing starting to come, welling up.
I don't know, something about addressing the supervisor, my supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, everything's dead.
You can go back and talk with this.
It's just like the supervisor. I don't know. I lost it.
Mm-hmm. Just a relief of that?
Yeah, there was a relief.
Right. So maybe part of why you have... Part of... we're having... Now imagine, this isn't funny really. Here we are on these grounds, and nobody has come forward to support either of us. And we're both working around the clock to provide these teachings. Andrew's being forced to jump back and forth and try and feel he's integrating in the midst of it all. And we can't safely leave the grounds. That's real. And we don't have any batteries. So that's an example. Andrew tried to order me a computer so I could make a treatment manual for you. And for some reason, the credit card he's using, because all I have is $1,000 a month, won't process it. And so how do I make a treatment manual for you? You see how if we have insight, we realize how much we're in domination as Mars culture here, and needless not domination. There's no need for any of this behavior. This is a safe person who wants to help you feel better and be safe inside and not have to jump anymore and not have to be mixed up anymore, and to do it in a way that's appropriate, where the whole world knows, you know, as far as spies and satellites or whatever, that there's a world garden, and that anybody from any country who really is committed can come in here and do this journey with caring. So here we are with this one silly battery left, and I would think that it'd be right about now for somebody to drive up. We all know that I know who many of you are, and I know who my first son and his wife are, and that they're very happy because they're starting to feel like, hey, maybe this could work out. We could have some time with Mom to work together on the treatment manual, to work together on our own counseling and care. And there's hope. There really is hope. So I'm happy that we have hope in the air. But I also want us to see how painful this is, the way we're treating each other. We don't have a lav. Andrew is guinea pig face this morning from jumping. What's going on? What's going on with you, Andrew?
I just... I don't know. I lost touch with the grief again, with the microphone passing, and it's like I went out of where I was going, which was into more, it felt like a good place, and now I feel like I kind of took a step back without meaning to.
Well, for today, why don't we get this up? And I'm going to keep working on the battery issue. I've given up on the computer. My other wish would be for medical care on the grounds for my sickness. There's no way I could carry a child with the body I have right now. So I was just saying that, you know, there's certain things that, again, if we're just looking at this without all the fear and control that you've broken through on a soul level, and try and relax, sit back. I've got the microphone. All you have to do right now is be in touch, be attuned to yourself. That's my quote orders for the day. What's that like to hear me say I have orders for you?
Somehow it felt like reassuring, like if I have orders from you, it's okay. And because I'm used to having orders.
Right. So now you trust me. So it's a relief that if you got to have orders, they're coming from someone safe. So just for you, Andrew, I'd like you to take today to be as attuned as you can, okay? I'm standing up for you out of great love, and out of great love for your supervisor. You know, I work with the sonic waves lately, this past week in particular, and they sometimes, heaven is trying to talk with me more. And so they were telling me the other day, one of the ways that some of the souls in heaven, who are very innocent beings, communicate is very dear and poetic. And so they were telling me about Terry Tree, and they give the name and then tree at the end for different souls that care about the new heaven and new earth and know how much I want to serve you all. And one of them said, you know, we're talking about your supervisor and him as a tree. And I've known about him as a tree for a couple of months, him and his family, and they're very, very holy people. And because of that, of course, there's a terrible hurt. So the name may not be tree, but the soul is. And I want you to know that I know that. And so today's a beautiful day, right? It's a day where I can feel your hope, your willingness to figure out the logistics so we can have our UN World Garden. And so the World Teacher, I started to say, can be born in a healthy body, right? So we understand what's happening with my health is that my plasma got infected many years ago, and that I would need to really get strong through several modalities of care to get my plasma to be hearty again. So it's been a big week here in review. I've broken the Mary Magdalene spell, so I'm not inappropriate in the ways I was without even knowing it, because the result of programming is that it's really hard to have insight. I had no insight that my sexual abuse had me behaving in dysregulated ways around sexuality when I was trying to bring the baby back. And now today, this is another beautiful day. You're going to really be able, Andrew, to calm down if you don't have your whole body molecularly in the faster than speed of light, banana-bathed way we learned as children, save the world by doing what you did. Remember the picture of me as a 7-year-old holding the rifle, right? Fully trained. That way, that totally mysterious, wild way, none of you guessed. Everybody thought maybe I'd help clean up the waters with some campaigning about litter or something if I was going to start to lead us. And the way I'm leading us is that we figure out how to be safe enough that the ultraviolet can't even work, because it can only work if we're frightened out of our mind. And that means that our supervisors and all of that are having to terrorize each other. We're all having to terrorize each other to keep that going. So your integration came to a standstill, not because you don't want to try, but because your loyalty to follow orders and not having support or recognition that this is still happening to you is such that, you hit a wall in how much is possible. Now, let's go over your tools. You remember the worksheet I made when I first tried to type up these YouTubes and make worksheets? There's some tools on there. Let's review what you can do for self-care over the next 2 or 3 days to start to know from your I am what I've introduced today about frequency jumping to your supervisor.
Being attuned to my body, to emotions, what's happening.
Beginning every day, like you do with yoga or meditation, you love your volcano. I love to go out and say hello to the waters, because the Holy Spirit is the wind and the water. The feminine, divine feminine holds the wind and the water, and the divine masculine holds the light and the earth. So I love to go out and do ceremony there. You do yoga. So essentially you have tons of tools, the 11 minutes in the river meditations you can practice, a lot of earth-centered practices. The equine therapy is great for this sort of thing. The gardening is great for this kind of thing. Using the Temescal by yourself today, booking a time, swimming. I want to get you some running shoes today. That's one of the things on my to-do list. Slowing down so that your nervous system isn't wired to be able to jump, even as a viable option. And of course, having your supervisor release you from ever having to do this. It's not a way to keep us safe. It's the opposite of world peace. If we're not at peace inside, there's no world peace. So, music, playing music. And of course, I want the tents on the grounds. I want a truth tent, a peace tent. I made a nature tent the other day. And we'll have the festival of tents after this is all over to remember that I created the tents as part of making it safe for us in the garden. It's all about being loved enough and trusting enough that we can start to slowly turn the Titanic around in the world garden. And that's for you, my son, especially today, the supervisor. I love you. I know who you are. I know that you're both hopeful and frightened, and there's a lot of that sometimes when I get close to my sons who have been really abused, there's a feeling like, on the one hand, you could burst with kind of a dominating feeling, and on the other hand, grief and just wanting to crumble because you know how much you long to be held by me. And we'll get there. First step, because exoneration is of course available, but we can't jump ahead. The first step is just to sit together and feel safe across from me as a counselor in a confidential way where we establish parameters for confidentiality. Part of the fear for everybody is I keep telling the truth on YouTube because how else do I reach you unless we can create closed grounds and closed counseling? But I need to sit with you. I need you to know that I know who you are in a way that is constructive to your integration. Andrew's integration is not the integration of a woman in her 60s who is from a suburb and came from a bloodline that is very royal and dealing with Asperger's. She can integrate based on Andrew, who's in his mid-20s and comes from another bloodline in the desert and has a whole different way he was made to do painful things in a dissociated state. Everybody who comes into the garden with me needs their own care. They need their own way to be cared for. We can't ask Andrew to be the guinea pig for the counseling for all of you. And the pressure that you feel is because everybody both hopes that they might be able to integrate through watching you, watching me with you, and or, control me. We're confused. But the tide is turning. The Titanic is turning around, or I wouldn't be so hopeful this morning. So as we conclude, and I finish my papaya, just know how much I care for you, how much I care for our world, how much I know we can do this. Enough of us care about this Mars business that we're going to get it sorted out enough that there's not going to be, to the extent of something that would be compromising, the blow-ups and bam-bams. We can let the natural, real deal happen, which is the booms. God booms. All right, so Mother knows we spilt the water. You can tell her the details in the truth tent. And so it is.